So there was a poll of young people that Ben Shapiro went on Fox News to talk about. And I love this segment because Ben portrays himself as the facts over feelings guy. And what you're going to notice here is his entire commentary is his feelings over the facts. So all he's going to do is just give you his opinion the entire time. Mr. Facts over Feelings is like, here's my interpretation of these numbers. Let's take a look.
Patriotism, a belief in God, and having children all rate far lower in importance than they did just 20 years ago, as you can see on that graphic. Religion, for example, at 30%. It was at 67% for people in the age range 55 to 91 when they did this 20 years ago. So when you look at this, you have to ask yourself, what do those numbers mean for the future of America? Because it could look very different. Joining me now, Ben Shapiro, editor-in-chief of DailyWire.com and author of The Right Side of History. Ben, great to have you here tonight. What do those numbers say to you?
Well, they say a lot of the common social institutions and philosophies around which the country was formed and has continued to progress are dissolving. I mean, if you get rid of patriotism and innate belief that the country and the principles upon which it was founded are wonderful. You get rid of religion, which is the main social institution that has been upholding a free society for the last couple of hundred years here in the United States. And then you get rid of even a care for the future, meaning people don't care about parenting or having children as much. The question becomes, what exactly are the ties that are supposed to bind us together other than watching the Super Bowl once a year together?
Yeah, good question. Let's break down each one of them. When you look at patriotism, what do you attribute the decline in that to?
Well, I think there have been two stories about American history that have been told in America. One is that America was founded on eternally good, true, and wonderful principles. We have not always lived up to those principles, but the story of America is an attempt to fulfill those great principles and is essentially a story of triumph over both the odds and over our inner demons as well. That's story number one. Story number two is that America was rooted fundamentally in evil, slavery, sexism, racism, bigotry, homophobia, and that all of our institutions are rife with these things. So why would you be patriotic about institutions that are so thoroughly corrupt? It seems like that latter narrative is winning the day these days, and that's what you're seeing with younger folks.
That's the Beto O'Rourke campaign, it sounds like, that you just encapsulated. Well, let's talk about religion for a moment here, because it seems to me, you know, I remember the me generation, which people thought was sort of a passing phase, but it seems to become a way of life now. And when me is at the center of everything, I don't think that you need to go out of yourself and ask, you know, God to save your soul or anything along those lines. So I don't see how you put that genie back in the bottle unless people are ultimately dissatisfied with that life.
I think that's right. I mean, religion is about fulfilling duty to other people, fulfilling duty to God, duties that lie beyond you. The same poll shows that a disproportionate share of younger people see self-fulfillment as a top goal. Well, those two are in direct conflict. Right. I think that people eventually are going to find that the hedonistic, self-fulfilling attempt to please yourself, your subjective perceptions, is not going to be as fulfilling. They are going to look for something beyond themselves. In fact, I think they're hungry for that now. It's leading to a lot of depression and upset, I think.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Let's put up that top values considered most important that Ben was just referring to. Hard work is the only thing that continues to rate very high over the course of the years that they've been looking at this. Tolerance for others. We talk a lot in society about tolerance and the importance of being tolerant of other people's lifestyles and all of that. That's a very high value. Particularly for young people. Is it necessarily a value that you think is a virtue worth striving for?
Well, I mean, I think that if by tolerating other people, we mean tolerating people in a free society doing what they're doing so long as they don't hurt others, of course that's something we should be striving for. But I think young people don't actually mean that when they say tolerance. I don't think a lot of young folks mean I'm going to tolerate viewpoints I don't like. I think what they mean is that if you judge me in any way, you're being intolerant, because I'm not judging you, except if you're judgmental, in which case I judge you and I'm intolerant. So tolerance itself is not a value. Tolerance is of value. It's a strategy to use when you're talking about what exactly is acceptable behavior in a free society. And it seems that young people are espousing a strategy above an actual value.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you just made all that up. None of that's based on the data. The data says that 80% value tolerance. And you put your own massive spin on it and you pretend like, I'm just telling it like it is, bro. No, you're not. That's just your opinion, man. He's so obnoxious. All right, so let's go through this. By the way, at the beginning he talks about the decline in patriotism and why that's a bad thing. And he defines it himself. He uses the word an innate belief that basically your country is wonderful. innate belief. But that's just the thing. That is against rationality and reason. It's an innate belief. Like, we're wonderful because we're us. Yes. Me. Gloriousness of me. I live here, therefore this place is perfect. Yes. It's actually like a really childish belief. This idea because Ben Shapiro happened to be born on this random patch of dirt, that this random patch of dirt, I have an innate belief that our country is wonderful. Okay, but let's actually look at the history. Let's look at the evidence. Let's look at the data. And by the way, are there things about this country that are wonderful? Yes, absolutely. But are there also things that are bad? Yes, absolutely. But he wants a black and white world when there's a lot of gray in this world. And that's why when he goes on to explain, like, oh, there's 2 stories that have been told. Really? There's only 2 stories that have been told about this country? That's it? There's not, like, I don't know, hundreds? There's 2 stories. One of them is basically that America's good. That's the conservative vision. And then there's the other one, the lefty vision, that America's bad. It's built on racism and misogyny and homophobia and blah, 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 blah. Or, and roll with me here for a second, Benny boy, or America is both good and bad. America was founded on slavery. America did have Jim Crow and segregation. America did involve doing a genocide of Native Americans. America also helped beat the Nazis. America also did the New Deal. America also had the Civil Rights Movement. You know, the KKK is American, as is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks. They're both American. So there's both good and bad in the country. There are positive things and there are negative things. In our history, there's positive things and there's negative things. The idea that he finds it necessary to break it down into there's story 1, which is America's good, and story 2, which is America's bad. And it's that second story which is catching on so much nowadays. No, it's the fact that people are actually being educated about what went on in this country and what continues to go on in this country, and then they're reacting accordingly that gets you upset. You want them to believe the mythology. You want them to believe we're uniquely good and we're special and American exceptionalism, yes. At the same time, everybody agrees, like, oh, what do you mean? It's a good thing. Equality is a good thing. We all want to be equal. We all think that's a wonderful thing. Then in the next breath, they're like, but America is exceptional. What? Wait, are people equal, or is America exceptional? Which is it? It's one or the other. You can't have both ways. So you have to pick. And then he also says religion upholds a free society. What are you basing that on? You're not basing that on anything. He would say, I'm basing that on hundreds of years of Judeo-Christian society flourishing. The Scandinavian countries are some of the most wildly successful countries. And they're massively non-religious. So much for your theory, it just fell apart. They kick our ass in virtually every measurable way, yet you just said religion, quote, upholds a free society. You know where religion is like most involved in politics? Saudi Arabia? Are they free society? See, he just says stuff. Like he argues off of his feelings. Ironically, because he says he's Mr. Facts over Feelings. And then there's this other thing that has been going around in conservative circles for a long time now, this idea that we're just more narcissistic today. How do you figure? I mean, yes, we have outlets like Facebook and Instagram and social media that certainly feed into that and let people broadcast that to the world, but people are people. If somehow you had Facebook or Instagram or whatever developed in 1918, people would have reacted the exact same way. People would have been using it the same way. There's an element of human beings that, yes, we are in part narcissistic and selfish, but there's also a part of us that believes in altruism and humanity and the collective good and community. That exists in humans. The idea that we're like uniquely narcissistic today, that's just like this lazy point of view that people espouse when they don't like the younger generation. And they just They want to make the older generation appear grandiose and the young generation be so stupid and self-obsessed and dumb. Sure, it was the older generations that crashed the economy and that sent us to illegal and offensive wars that we shouldn't have gone to, like the war in Iraq. But whatever, you guys are like selfish. You on your smartphone? Is that what you're doing? You're on your smartphone? It's just so stupid. And then finally, I submit to you, look at the actual numbers that were put on screen and then think of the entire conversation Ben was having here, because Ben gives his opinion the entire time, but when they put the numbers on screen, what do you see? What do people care about? Self-fulfillment, 64%. Hard work, 89%. Tolerance, 80%. Community, 62%. So, in other words, the belief in both self-fulfillment and community is about the same. 64% for self-fulfillment, 62% for community. So what does that prove? Exactly what I just told you. We're both narcissistic and selfish, human beings are, and we also believe in altruism and humanity and the common good and the collective, the community. So we're both of those things, but he wants to only play up the self-fulfillment part and ignore the community part. They're selfish, narcissistic, bad. And also, by the way, there is no further definition of self-fulfillment. When you ask somebody, do you believe in self-fulfillment? Of course they're going to say, yeah, but what do they mean by that? Some people mean, I feel more fulfilled when I go and feed homeless people at the shelter. So self-fulfillment is being interpreted in a purely narcissistic way, but it's not. It's not necessarily purely narcissistic. So again, all he does is put his own spin on it and ignore the reality of it, because what did they not focus on at all? The whole idea of this younger generation that they try to perpetuate is they're lazy, they're selfish, they got all these problems, they don't care about serious things like the older generation cared about. Meanwhile, 89% believe in hard work. Weird, doesn't fit the narrative of like the lazy millennial, now does it, Ben? So they just ignore it. Don't talk about that part because that's inconvenient for the narrative that we're trying to push. And even when he started babbling incoherently about tolerance, like 80% believe in tolerance. That means 80% believe in tolerance. Then he puts his own spin on it, like, well, they don't mean actual tolerance of like tolerating me for when I make a shitty point. The reason people dunk on you, Ben, is because you say dumb things. There's no... Tolerance doesn't play into that equation. When people try to fact-check your ass, they're fact-checking your ass because you're wrong. They can be tolerant of you existing in society and doing whatever you want to do and pushing your propaganda on a daily basis, but that doesn't mean they're not going to fact-check you. So he just tries to twist definitions to fit his own... whatever. I don't even know why I'm wasting my time with this. He's a joke, and that's crystal clear.